Welcome to another video for the playtest material for One D&D. They've released some videos on some of the expert classes, and today we're going to watch the Ranger expert class video and see what we think about it. Let's take a look.
We've got another class, another subclass as well. We've got the Ranger. This has seen some changes, and like you said, it's now an expert, so Rangers can be like the best at whether it's survival or stealth. They now feel like at home amongst the rogue and the bard.
Absolutely. And the Ranger has, of the three classes in this Unearthed Arcana, the most new features. Now, some of the features here are...
That's good. I know a lot of people were very disappointed with the Ranger in 5th edition. They just didn't feel like they had an identity, and whatever identity that they did have was not very effective game mechanic wise within the game anywhere. So I'm glad that they are updating the Ranger.
Are going to be familiar to anyone who has Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, because some of these features are either from that book or these are new versions of features that are found there. All of this is combined to create a Ranger that comes out swinging at first level and is solid, perhaps too solid.
Comes out swinging at first level. Nobody has any abilities to do anything at first level. Everybody is pretty much just swinging a wet sock at first level. I'm not sure how. I mean, I'll be interested to see what they can do at first level that is so world breaking above everybody else.
All the way up to 20th level. And I say it this way because this is a playtest. And with the Ranger in particular, we have erred on the side of making them as badass as it makes sense to make them right now. And if necessary, some things can be reined in. But there is a lot of fun stuff here for any of us who love Rangers to enjoy. So that starts with, at first level, the expertise that we mentioned. You also get, and this is a biggie for Rangers, you now get access to your spell casting at first level,
okay,
and that includes cantrips. Rangers now have access to a number of spells that is unprecedented for the class in the past. If you are a Ranger player, you are going to now find...
I mean, we haven't seen a lot of classes yet, but everybody has more spells because they consolidated all the spell lists into just 3 spell lists. So I think everybody has more spells. So that's not really saying much. Giving them spells at first level, including cantrips, okay, well that's nice. That is a boost, but I think if your goal is to make a Ranger that's more ranged, you're probably like ranged weapons, you're probably going to be using your ranged weapon, and if you're focused more on melee, you'll probably be using your melee weapon. So having the spells at first level, I'm not sure what a big boost that would be. You don't normally get ability bonuses on your cantrips. So if they're getting their ability bonuses on their weapon, why would they use the cantrips? So that's not a big benefit, unless they work out something with a green flame blade or booming blade, something like that. That'd be the only situation where it might be beneficial, where the cantrips would be of any real use. That's just my 2 cents.
Yourself with an amazing buffet of magical options in front of you that will help you tailor make the Ranger you want to play, rather than waiting for 2nd level. One reason we did this was not only to get Rangers going.
I wonder if other partial classes,
pillar of the class right away, and also to give Rangers some iconic abilities right out of the gate via their spellcasting feature. But it was also important for us to do this because of how Favored Enemy now works. Favored Enemy now allows the Ranger to always have the Hunter's Mark spell prepared. It does not count against the number of spells the Ranger has prepared, and it does not require concentration.
Wow.
So the Ranger is now going...
Okay, so that is big. That is big. I've played ranged and melee Rangers, and a melee Ranger, I didn't use Hunter's Mark hardly at all because I would lose concentration if I was up in melee. So that's big. But also, I guess, so I said, I'm going to retract what I said before. The cantrips I still don't think are of super use, but being able to throw out Hunter's Mark at first level, that is a much bigger deal, allowing you to and keep it up with without concentration. That is a big deal in allowing you to really up the damage level right off the bat. Especially if you then go 2-weapon fighting. Even if you don't have the 2-weapon fighting skill, just attacking with a second weapon with your bonus action, being able to put that on both, that's huge.
To be able to place Hunter's Mark on a foe,
or Hunter's Mark just once
and
a
not
turn.
have to concentrate on it, and that is how they designate that foe as their favored enemy. Now, I very casually said something just a moment ago. I mentioned when we were talking about the Bard, but critical to also mention here for Rangers, and that is, rather than Rangers having a list of spells that they know, Rangers can now prepare their spells. What that means is, whenever a Ranger finishes a long rest, they can swap out the spells that are available to them to cast in the coming day.
Right.
This is huge. This means that Ranger players are going to be able to customize what their Ranger is able to do in different adventures on different adventuring days to really target what are the challenges they think are going to be ahead of them. Mm-hmm. This also makes it possible, as we discussed about the Bard, for Rangers to feel more at liberty to use many of the non-combat spells that are now available to them. So that when they're in an adventure or a session, it's not really about fighting, but it's about exploration, or it might be about social interaction. The Ranger can lean into the parts of their spell list that speak to...
I think that's game breaking either way.
But oh my gosh, there's so much more. This class has some under the hood things going on for it that are going to be huge. And one of these we'll also want to touch on when we're talking about the Rogue is actually not in the class write-up in the Sun Earth Arcana for the Ranger and the Rogue. It's in the rules glossary. And that is, we give, for this playtest, a critical new definition to the light weapon property.
Okay.
So the light weapon property in the 2014 Player's Handbook is a key part of the 2-weapon fighting rule in that version of the book's combat rules. For anyone who's not familiar, in that rule, if you were wielding 2 weapons that have the light property, if you attack with one, on that turn you can then with a bonus action attack with the other.
Right.
And you're not able to add your ability modifier to the damage of that bonus attack unless that ability modifier is negative.
Just like being ambidextrous in real life. That's my experience.
Right. And I'm bringing this up, of course, because 2-weapon fighting has always been one of the iconic optional modes for both Rangers and Rogues.
Right.
So here is what is critically different here, and also really important for how Favored Enemy now works. We have made it so that, first off, that 2-weapon fighting rule no longer exists as a separate rule. In fact, and I've actually talked about this before in a video, that rule is a bit misplaced in the 2014 Player's Handbook because it isn't actually a 2-weapon fighting rule. It's simply telling you how the light weapon property functions. Mm-hmm. So what we have done, and we actually have already done this in our recent starter set, Dragons of Stormwreck Isle, we've moved that rule into the light weapon property itself. Here in the playtest we go even further. That bonus attack no longer requires your bonus action. Now how the light weapon property functions is if you take the attack action on your turn and you attack with a light weapon, if you have another light weapon in hand, you can make a free extra attack with that weapon as part of the same action, but you're still not able to add your ability modifier.
So, if you have 2 light weapons and stay in 5e, you do your attack and then a bonus action for a secondary attack. But in One D&D, it's the attack action and then it's a free attack, freeing up your bonus action. That could be huge depending on what you can do with your bonus action as a ranger. It'll be interesting to see what all options there are. There's bonus action spells. You have healing word. You can get in all of your attacks and still healing word somebody. You don't have to sacrifice things like that for that extra attack. That's interesting. That does seem like a big power boost to the ranger.
Fire to the damage of that extra attack.
This lines with my interests.
So this is huge, and we're doing this because it is actually for us and for many players been a pain point for a number of years that 2 weapon fighting characters, or more correctly, characters who use light weapons,
Right.
have had sort of a bonus action tax
Right.
that then conflicts with
that.
many other features in the game that also require their bonus action. We have been planning on playtesting this publicly for a few years now. So I'm so excited that it's finally...
We've known that our current design was awful for years now, so we decided to do nothing about it until we were going to remake the rules for Dungeons and Dragons. Instead of just fixing the mistake we made, we decided to let it fester on our players for years before we chose to address it. And we only addressed it now simply because we are rewriting the rules. Thanks. That's great. Appreciate that. And I paused it on a great face for you again. Not this one, but the previous one. You're welcome.
It's finally in the public's hands to try out. And it had to be here because a part of the design of the new favored enemy is rangers using their bonus action to apply Hunter's Mark. And we did not want rangers who like using 2 weapons to suddenly not be able to interact with their favored enemy in a clean way.
Yeah. You've got too many stages to basically just play the way you want to, like threading everything with that bonus action. It can be...
Now, it occurs to me that that really gives a huge bonus to rangers that do 2-weapon fighting, but now that's going to hinder any ranger that doesn't, unless there's some other great features they're getting ready to tell us about that I don't know about, which obviously I don't know about any of them yet, but it seems like a huge boon for 2-weapon fighting, but it didn't catch it up with the other fighting styles for rangers. It leapfrogged them. So we'll see how that plays out.
It can be a hindrance.
Exactly. Now, there are also still now other things in the game that can modify how you interact with the light weapon property. So if anyone's curious, there are still options available for modifying how you interact with that, including through fighting styles and other feats. And I say other feats because at 2nd level, Rangers get the fighting style feature, which they had in the 2014 Player's Handbook, but this time, fighting styles have all been redesigned as feats. There's a reason for this. We want any class that has access to fighting
styles are now feats. So, I was probably going to say this, but then my question would be, does anybody get the feat? Who gets the feat? Also, at 2nd level, you get these. I didn't think you got feats at 2nd level. I thought feats were now at the start of the game, but then at 4 and 8 and so on and so forth all the way through. So please expound upon that.
Styles to have the option of taking more of them whenever you choose feats.
Nice.
And so that's also a big deal for Rangers. You no longer have this, well, I picked one and I hope I like it. Because now you can pick that one, and then if you want more, any time that you're picking feats later, because you qualify as a Ranger for fighting style feats, you can go back to that pool.
Okay, so you have to qualify specifically for fighting style feats. Okay, so like the fighter and the paladin and the ranger would probably all qualify. That makes it a little bit more restrictive as opposed to just anybody being able to grab it, but that makes a little bit more sense. I'm still struggling on the second level part though, unless it's just you get a free feat at second level, but it has to be a weapon or a fighting style feat.
That's also another one of the awesome things going on for Rangers. We also have now an even better version of the roving feature that debuted in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Now the speed boost is 10 feet instead of 5.
Woohoo!
The tireless feature is back and revised. We also have Nature's Veil, which is Ranger's ability to just calling on the spirits of nature to turn invisible. They get blind sight through their feral senses. They get Foe Slayer at 18th level instead of 20th level. There is a whole lot of awesome in this class.
All the 20th level stuff got moved up to 18.
I think people are going to have their socks knocked off by just what this Ranger is now capable of doing. And we haven't even talked about the Hunter.
We haven't talked about the subclass. We haven't talked about the Hunter, right?
That is a pretty big change to
let's delve into the Hunter.
basic.
So the Hunter
or the basic
has
Ranger
been re-looked at from top to bottom. What you're going to see here is we looked at the Hunter. It's an unusual subclass that at different points had sub-feature choices. And we realized exactly the same thing that many Ranger players realized over the last many years. And that is, many of those options just don't stack up against each other. In each group, there was almost always the obvious great one, and then two that were fine, but not as good as the obvious great one.
Right.
And so what we've done with the Hunter is looked at the one that is the best and refine it so that all Hunters will be delighted to have it. So you're going to see that with Hunter's Prey. You're going to see that with multi-attack. You're going to see that with Superior Hunter's Defense. And you're also going to see a brand new feature. There's this new feature at 6th level for the Hunter called Hunter's Lore. And what this now does, piggybacking on the new way Favorite Enemy works, is as long as your Hunter's mark is on somebody, and in my mind, the Hunter should have special stuff going on when they use Hunter's Mark, the spell that has their subclass name in it.
Right.
And so from 6th level on, when a Hunter has Hunter's Mark on a creature, the Hunter knows all of that creature's resistances, immunities, and vulnerabilities. Because the Hunter should be the great...
That's good. It's nice to have that information. We'll see when we see the creatures. They haven't released any monsters for this edition yet, but there weren't. I mean, I guess there were at higher levels. There's a lot of stuff with resistance, but there's very little vulnerability or immunity. So we'll see.
Greatest Hunter in the game, the one who is able, particularly calling on the forces of nature to aid them to figure out how best to take down this foe.
Rather than some of that kind of feeling being in the Battlemaster fighter from earlier, it makes way more sense to be in Ranger.
But we'll get to the fighter. We'll get to the fighter in a future Unearthed Arcana.
Yes, later on.
Yes.
So there were any more features from the Ranger Hunter?
So one of the fun things for people to try.
Are there any more features for the Ranger Hunter? I've told you one thing they get. Nope, that's it. That's all they get for the next 14 levels. That's it. No more abilities. Thanks. Let's work on our segues. Okay, wizards. Better segues.
Try out in the Hunter is the new version of multi-attack. Here we are experimenting with something we've never done before in the current version of the game. And that is allowing you to down level a spell. Here's what's going on. The Hunter, when you get the multi-attack feature at 10th level, has the ability to always have the Conjure Barrage.
The multi-attack ability at 10th level. Maybe I'm misunderstanding. Did the Ranger not get it at 5th level before? So he doesn't get a multi-attack until 10th level now? Or is this different than extra attack was? I feel like I'm missing something. They've pushed back that extra attack. That really discourages people from doing anything other than two-weapon fighting. Discourages any other kind of rangers because you've got to get to level 10 before you would get a second attack if that's the case. So maybe I'm misunderstanding that, and hopefully he'll explain it a little bit better here.
Barrage spell prepared. Doesn't count against the number of spells you have prepared. So it's like Hunter's Mark in that way. But there's more. You can not only cast this 3rd level spell with a 3rd level spell slot, you can also cast it with 1st and 2nd level spell slots. For each lower level that you go, you take one of the damage dice away. Here's the thing. Conjure Barrage, even cast at 1st level, because of its area of effect, is going to be awesome. So if you realize, okay, I want to hit a bunch of people, but don't need the damage to be the level that Conjure Barrage is normally at,
Right.
down level that sucker and still cast the spell. This is a new spell casting mechanic.
It's interesting.
And I was super excited to put it into the Hunter, and I am looking forward to seeing people. They already have loved the ability to up level spells.
Yeah.
I feel like you could just make it a lower level spell. Just make it a 1st level spell that does, the 1 damage. Like if at 3rd level it does 5 dice or 3 dice probably of damage, and then at 2nd level it's 2, and at 1st level it's 1. Just make it a 1st level spell. I mean, I guess maybe you don't want them to have access to AoE spells that early, but later on having a 1st level slot that does that kind of damage is okay. That just feels clunky and unnecessary.
Now we are experimenting with down leveling spells.
If you want to give me an AoE as a ranger at level 1, I'm not going to say no.
Well, this is at 10th level.
Well, 10th level, yeah.
Yeah, 10th level.
But the reason why this is a huge deal is particularly with a class like the Ranger.
I'm like, why would you ever use any of your other 1st level spells? It completely nullifies your other 1st level spells because they're not giving you AoE at 1st level. So you're not going to be using any of your 1st level spells or any of your 1st level slots at that point. That doesn't make any sense.
This is true for the Paladin as well, where your spell slots are more constrained than, say, the Bards.
Right.
Being able to use a heavy-hitting spell, particularly again because of its very large area of effect, with your lower-level slots is really good for you, because then that means you can use your higher-level slots for something else if, again, let's say really what your priority is, hitting many people and not necessarily the damage being as high as possible.
Right.
So this gives you the ability to basically turn the dial up and down. It's a playtest. We'll see how it goes.
True,
but
that's fair.
Again, I'm excited for this to be a new toy in the toy box.
It's a strange design, but it is a playtest.
Now, there are 2 more Ranger things related to spellcasting I want to touch on because they're in the rules glossary.
Okay.
One of the suggested spells for the Ranger here is Barkskin. And anyone who's familiar with the 2014 version of Barkskin might be wondering, why is this being presented as an iconic spell for the Ranger? Because, unfortunately, the current design of Barkskin makes it so that it's often great to cast on somebody else who isn't wearing armor, but isn't so great for the Ranger themselves in a typical circumstance. Not only because of the dexterity a Ranger typically has, but also because of the armor that Rangers can wear. We have been planning to revise Barkskin for quite some time, and so there is a new version of Barkskin in the rules glossary of this UA, where
Once again, we've known for a long time this wasn't working right, but we just didn't fix it. Thanks.
whoever you cast it on, bark still appears on them and protects them, but now it is this bark that regenerates and gives the target of the spell temporary hit points. We've also added the ability to up-level Barkskin and start with higher level slots, which will also be very helpful for the Druid in a future Unearthed Arcana, the ability to cast it on multiple people who will now all have this bark, and you can imagine it being broken away as the temporary hit points go away, and then the bark regrows to have this protective layer that will complement a person's armor class rather than being a replacement for armor class, or in the case of how barks.
So does that mean that with Barkskin, you can put it on people that already have armor on? I mean, that's what it sounded like to me. And if that's the case, then it's just a giving 10 hit points to people. That could make Barkskin far more useful, especially if you upcast it to cover more people.
Worked before, created a minimum for your armor class.
Right.
The other spell that appears on the Ranger's suggested spell list that gets a new version in this UA is Guidance. Guidance is a beloved cantrip, especially outside combat. It's often not practical to cast in combat because of the concentration it requires and its casting.
Well, and the fact that you don't, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, guidance just affects ability checks. And you're not usually doing a lot of ability checks mid-combat. That's usually out of combat when you're trying to find things, investigate, search, disarm traps, things like that.
Time. But we've also seen that outside combat, the spell has had the potential to be overly spammable, to the point that some groups just decide if someone has guidance, everyone adds 1d4 to their rolls all the time. Despite the fact that the concentration of the spell in the past often would make that technically not work. But what we've decided is we want to experiment with a new version of the spell that is reactive. And so similar to what we're doing with the Bard's Bardic Inspiration, Guidance is now used as a reaction in response to somebody else failing a particular roll. But if the person accepts that benefit and rolls the die that Guidance gives them, they can't benefit from it again until they finish a long rest. This is a cantrip. Guidance is not meant to be the all-day bonus.
Right.
It is a little bit of magic you can sprinkle on. You can still cast it at will, but you can't just keep casting it on the same person all day long. It's like each person can benefit from this primal or divine guidance once a day.
Okay.
But you could certainly go and cast it on an entire village of people. If you happen to witness them failing at something.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing. Is
Interesting.
Cast in,
That certainly drops that down in power level quite a bit.
And I think this is going to be fun for Rangers to have now that they finally get cantrips. So that here they're going to have things like Guidance and Thorn Whip. And I think things that are going to feel really great in this class's hands. Really leaning into overall this idea of the Ranger being the expert of the wilderness who has not only gets the expertise feature once but twice, because Rangers get it also at a higher level, giving the Ranger 4 depending on how high up you get in the class, up to 4 skills that you're going to have expertise in. And, also channeling this primal magic as you track creatures and use your hunter's mark on them. It's exciting stuff.
It's a very powerful ranger.
Yes.
I'm trying to contain my excitement.
And my excitement isn't. It's not abstract. In our upcoming playtest here, I will be playing a ranger. So.
Yeah, well, of course, Thorn Whip belongs to a ranger. Like, these are very huntery spells that make a lot of sense, especially like if you want to play kind of a bounty hunter ranger. That stuff.
And that's something as we are looking at really ensuring each class has a place all their own. One of the things that became very clear as we analyzed what we're currently calling the primal spell list is, while druids are the sort of the paramount primal spellcasters, they are to the ranger what the cleric is to the paladin, of having access to the full range of primal spells. That said, there are a number of spells on that list that are really a better fit for the ranger, and even things like Thorn Whip, of getting someone closer to you.
Yeah.
Many druids don't actually want that. Because many druids do not have the resilience that a ranger has.
Right.
And so Thorn Whip is actually a great example of, sure.
Most druids did have the resilience. You thorn whip someone in, and then you change into a bear and you eat their face. Thorn Whip isn't something you use every round all the time. It's a cantrip that's used to move people around. It's a control cantrip more than a damage cantrip. But I digress.
Some druids, particularly some Circle of the Moon druids, might want to pull someone closer before they then transform into
I'm a genius
and attack them. But many druids would rather be 30 to 60 feet that way casting spells on somebody from afar. Whereas the ranger, particularly a ranger who is focusing on melee weapons, will very happily be like, no, you get back over here. I'm not done with you yet.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Of course, can you, as a ranger with melee weapons, now that they are heavily encouraging you to go 2-weapon fighting, can you cast Thorn Whip with both weapons in your hands? I suppose you could open a battle with Thorn Whip, pull them in, and then draw your weapons to start the next round. But that seems unwieldy as well. So anyway, there is the Ranger in the playtest material and our reaction to their video. Subscribe down below, give us a thumbs up, and we'll get the next one out to you. We're going to hopefully have Rogue. It's just right here. We'll have Rogue out to you guys shortly. These aren't my links. These are theirs on their video. My links, I guess I'll put them up top this time because they moved their links around. And until the next video, keep on hacking the dungeon.